First of all, we were just seeing the car parked by itself. We must have heard something because David's turned off the car and we listened. Then we heard screaming. My name is Wayne Nielsen. I was a policeman for close on 20 years.
Wayne is taking us back in time to a Saturday night in May 1983. It's just past midnight and he's patrolling the streets of Liverpool in Sydney's southwest with Constable Dave Stevenson.
Turned the truck around to face the vehicle. I met the young woman running from the vehicle. Extremely distressed, clutching her dress and saying that the guy's got a gun, he's threatened to kill her. Immediately we drew our revolvers and told him to get out of the vehicle with his hands so we could see them, so that he wasn't armed. He got out of the vehicle and as he did so with his hands up, his pants came down, and we've then got him to go against the vehicle at that stage. He's still got his hands up after he's got his pants up, and we've searched him looking for this gun. Dave went back to speak to her while I was guarding the offender. Dave's then come back and said to the offender that the victim has complained that you sexually assaulted her.
And what did the alleged offender say?
Well, he said something in relation to she deserved it or something like that. She was only a mole. That's how he was behaving towards her at the time. At some stage, we searched the vehicle. Well, Dave searched the vehicle while I was still with the truck and the victim. Dave didn't come up with anything. Under the seat, she alleged that the weapon was under a seat, that he reached for it a couple of times during the assault.
Was a weapon found?
No.
So did you take this man back to the police station and did he identify himself to you?
Yes, we found out his identity.
What did he say his name was?
Kevin Cornwall.
I'm Ashlea Hansen, and you're listening to episode 10 of Dear Rachelle, a podcast by True Crime Australia. This is the untold story of Rachelle Childs, a 23-year-old who was brutally murdered. Her killer has never been caught. In your experience, how common is it to make an arrest during an alleged attack?
Yeah, not very often. You get people in the act of it, breaking and enters you do and things like that. But certainly not sexual assaults. I can't think of any other ones which happened at the time we actually arrested them, basically in the act.
Wayne is recalling his arrest of Kevin Steven Correll more than 4 decades ago. Kevin, who later changed his surname to Correll, became the key suspect in Rachelle's murder. You've already heard about 2 other sexually motivated attacks in which Kevin was charged but later acquitted. Wayne is talking about a 3rd case in which Kevin was also acquitted. The alleged victim is a young woman whose identity is protected. She'd met Kevin at a popular Liverpool nightclub called Scaramouche. We think it's important to tell you about this case and allow you to decide if you think it's relevant to Rachelle's case. At the heart of it is a young woman who found herself alone in a car with Kevin. That's not in dispute. What was contested is what happened inside Kevin's car. This is part of what the alleged victim told a Sydney court when Kevin went to trial. This is not her voice, but these are her words.
Well, first, he leant over and started trying to kiss me and that's when I said to him, "I've got a husband." And he said, "You're nothing but he called me a lesbian, a tramp, and all those sorts of things. And he said, "1 minute you've told me you're engaged, next thing you tell me you're married." I said, "You better leave me alone." And he moved back and then started undoing his pants. And then he grabbed me by the hair and I just started crying. And the more I cried, the angrier he got. And he started slapping me in the face and said, "Stop crying." And then I got back up and I was just sitting there. And then he leant over again and grabbed me by the neck and he says, I've got a gun underneath the front seat if you don't come across. And all I kept on thinking was this couldn't be happening. I just kept crying and he got worse and worse and he started bending my neck right back. And I was just sitting there and then his eyes sort of lit up. I tried to get out of the door, but it was locked. So I unlocked it and I got out of the car. I went to get out of the car. I was screaming and everything and he tried to start the car to get away. And then I went running over to the police truck screaming. And he pulled all the straps down of my dress down. And then I told the police he had a gun. And so they went straight over to him. And then one of the policemen came back over to me and I sat down in the police van and he said to me, "What happened?" And I said, "He tried to kill me."
What began as a standard night for Constable Wayne Nielsen more than 40 years ago, patrolling Sydney's southwest, has stayed with him to this day.
Well, she was highly upset. I mean, she just went through a very traumatic time where she obviously felt her life was threatened. She was violently sexually assaulted.
Wayne was struck by how Kevin, who was 27 at the time, was acting towards the young woman.
Well, he was pretty offensive towards the female in his language and his demeanour and how he related to her. It seems like that was a very common attitude of his, you know.
Would it be fair to call him an extreme misogynist? The way that he was describing her
well,
and
certainly
the name
in
calling?
his behaviour, I mean, total disregard for respect of a female.
Kevin claims the alleged victim agreed to go for a drive after she was denied entry to the nightclub. But she claims he'd offered to give her a lift home. Kevin says inside the car, the pair got into an argument and she became upset. Kevin took the stand to defend himself. Here's part of what he told the court, voiced by an actor.
I stopped the car at Woodward Park and told her to settle down. She was crying by then, upset. And we talked for maybe 5 minutes and she seemed to appear to me to settle down a little bit. Then I put my arm around her and I first kissed her on the cheek and then I started kissing her on the lips. She responded to that. She seemed to settle down a little bit again. And I again put my arm around her and kissed her. The response was more this time, that she was kissing me back. We kissed for a while and I undone my top button and my fly. She said, "You fucking guys are all the same." And we started an argument. She said, "I'm married, I've got a husband at home," something to that, and I replied to that, "You told me earlier on in the evening that you'd just broken off your engagement." She called me names, and then I called her a slut. I think I called her a mole and teaser or something. I think she said again to take her home. I told her I'll drop her back up at Scaramouche. She said, "I want to go home." And she said, "You told me you'd said a while ago that you'd take me home." I said, "That was before you started carrying on like an idiot." And I said, "I'm going to drop you back up to Scaramouche." We were arguing, as I said, and a light came up the driveway. As it got closer, I seen the police light on top of the truck, and I said something like, "It's the bloody coppers, not to worry, they'll go straight past." And the police stopped and she started screaming.
Kevin denies having a gun in his car and no weapons were found. A jury later found Kevin not guilty of the attack. Let's return to Wayne Nielsen. I asked him, generally speaking, how vulnerable is a woman in a car with a dangerous man?
Extremely vulnerable. I think a lot of times females may not realise how dangerous a male can be, how strong and driven.
Let's bring in retired detective Damian Loone to get his thoughts on this third sexual assault case.
Well, when you look at the circumstances of how he's arrested at gunpoint, it's a smoking gun brief, as they say. You know, here he gets out of a car. He's been accused of a sexually motivated attack against a young intoxicated woman. And he gets out of the car and the cops pull him out of the car at gunpoint and his pants fall down around his ankles. You know, you couldn't get better evidence. Police had enough evidence to charge him. They would have obtained a statement from the victim. and it would have gone up to the district court for trial. And yet again, as I say, this is the course of justice that he went under. He was acquitted on those matters.
And now is probably the time to tell you about the first rape allegation levelled against Kevin. The year was 1980 and Kevin was 24, DJing in Sydney's southwest. On this occasion, a 17-year-old told police Kevin had offered to drive her home from a Liverpool nightclub. She alleges he pulled a knife on her, ordering her into the back seat where he allegedly raped her before dropping her home. Kevin was charged with rape and 2 counts of indecent assault. He was committed to stand trial and later acquitted of all charges. For anyone keeping count, that's 4 acquittals for sexually motivated attacks on young women in the space of 3 years. How could one man be so unlucky to be wrongly accused by 4 different women? Not guilty and Kevin Cornwall were quite a recurring theme in the 1980s. In this investigation, we've been trying to fill in the missing 9 hours from when Rachelle was last seen leaving Camden Holden to when her burning body was found just after 2 a.m. on Friday, June 8, 2001. One of the last people to see Rachelle alive was her final customer, Kathy Thielander.
I had gone in to see Rachelle about purchasing a vehicle off the lot, and she was her usual beautiful self, and we spoke about it. I think I was trading in a vehicle as well, which she loved. So we spoke about that. My daughters were with me and my sister was with me, I think also. You know, we would have got there about 3:45. And Rachelle had to leave in the afternoon. She apologised. She said she had to be somewhere and she had to leave a little bit earlier than what she thought she would.
Did she give you any reason as to why she had to leave early that day?
No, she didn't. I've thought about this. No, she didn't give me any reason. She was very happy though, but you know, every time I saw Rachelle, she was happy.
Did she take a car for a test drive with you? What car were you looking at and who else was there with you that day?
Because I had a familiarity with Camden Holden, my husband at the time had worked there for many years, and although he had left, we still remained in close contact with some of the people that worked there. So I was well known to the dealership. So usually if I liked a car, I was just allowed to take it out myself, drive it around. No, she didn't come with me. There was Kevin Correll. He was there. He wasn't too far away at any point. He was sort of in the background a few metres away. He was listening to Rachelle, listening to what was happening. He did seem particularly interested in hearing everything that Rachelle and I were talking about, and he wasn't too far away. When we went into the office to discuss the finance, he was definitely there, not too far away. So he was sort of not too far away, maybe a metre, sort of behind her desk and around. Truly just think he was eavesdropping.
Do you have any recollections about doing any paperwork with Rachelle in terms of buying the car?
I did. I filled out paperwork. Might have been done the day before or the day before that. They said the paperwork had gone missing, and I remember sitting there with Rachelle and she couldn't find our paperwork. She couldn't find our loan application. She was asking Kevin if he'd seen them because they were definitely on her desk. They would have been in a file, I'm sure. And he said no, he hadn't seen them. No, they're just there. And she said, well, they're not just there, they're gone, and they were here. And he said, no, and they're just there. And she looked at us and rolled her eyes as if, like he was no help at all. That was when he was sort of lingering. He wasn't too far away.
What was your impression of Rachelle's reaction to that?
She was frustrated, and I think that it made her look unprofessional, which she didn't like because she was very professional.
Did you ever wonder what had happened to that paperwork that you'd filled out?
So when I rang back early the next week for the application to be processed and lodged, and that's when they told me that I asked to speak to Rachelle, and that's when they told me that that Rachelle had passed away. I think I was so shocked to hear that. I did wonder why I had to basically apply for this loan twice. A few weeks after Rachelle had passed, I did a credit reference check on myself because it was nagging at me in my mind. And that loan for that statesman had been applied for a couple of times at least, and then not gone ahead. And I thought that was very strange. So the paperwork hadn't been lost; it had actually been lodged.
Do you think that Rachelle had anything to do with that paperwork being lost?
No.
Why are you so confident of that?
I really don't think so. She seemed exasperated that she couldn't find it. Kevin was blasé that it couldn't be found. And no, look, that's just a gut feeling. I doubt it very much. And when we were out on the lot, I could see he was watching her again. And I thought to myself at the time, I think he had a little crush on her. And the way he did used to watch Rachelle, I can picture him now just sort of like leering at her out the corner of his eye. I didn't like it. And she seemed quite oblivious.
Both Rachelle and her boss Kevin were last sighted at Camden Holden on the night in question. It's June 7, a winter's night in the historic Australian country town of Camden. This time of year, the sun begins to set just before 5 p.m, so it's getting dark and chilly. We know Rachelle leaves work just after 5 and heads towards her home in Bargo. That's a 30-minute drive south. On the way, she calls Kristy, who is staying at their parents' place in Glenfield, a suburb in Campbelltown. So Rachelle is home alone.
I remember she called me on her way home from work. I was on, when you used to have like the second line on the landline. I was on the phone to my best mate from school and I heard the call come through and I said, I'll just answer this quickly. So I jumped over to the other line and it was Rachelle and she was driving because she always spoke so fast. She just said, "Hey, Rachelle." And I said, "Hey, I'm on the other line to Erin." And she went, "Oh, radio, call me back." I said, "Okay, bye." And that was it. I hung up. That was the last time I spoke to her.
That's Rachelle's last known phone contact with anyone on the evening she was murdered. A minute later, her blue Holden Commodore was spotted by a council ranger driving through Camden at 5:16 p.m. A friend who knows Rachelle from work later tells police she flicked her headlights at him as they drove past each other through Camden. All clues to this point tell us she's heading home, and it's believed she had somewhere to go. We're pretty sure she made it home to Bargo. If she went straight home, she would have got there just before 6 p.m. Her friend Fiona remembers going to Bargo the following day.
When I arrived at her house, the lights were all on and the telly was still on and the windows were, like the blinds were open. I could see. It looked like she'd literally just left, gotten changed and left.
We don't know where she went, with who, or if she went willingly. This is where we lose any trace of Rachelle. Now we're going to explore Kevin's alibi in close detail. Kevin voluntarily participated in 3 interviews with police in relation to Rachelle's murder. And we've gathered the following timeline from his evidence, as well as police evidence, including mobile phone data. I want to foreshadow 2 points Kevin wasn't immediately forthcoming with police about: his address at the time, and a curious phone call. Okay, let's get into it. Kevin tells detectives he leaves Camden Holden after Rachelle, between 5:30 and 5:40. It's his son's birthday that day, the Thursday leading into the June long weekend. He tells police he drives about 20 minutes east to Campbelltown Mall, looking for a wallet as a present. Kevin says he arrives at Campbelltown, parks and walks around for about 10 minutes, but doesn't buy anything. Next he drives to a leather goods shop in a shopping centre a few minutes away at MacArthur Square. He drives there, but there's a queue to get into the car park. Kevin says that's when he changes his mind. realising he won't be seeing his son that evening, and decides to buy him an HSV jacket from Camden Holden instead. Now, this is a critical moment in Kevin's alibi. According to the timings in his statement, he was in the Campbelltown area shopping until at least 6:10 at the earliest, possibly later if he left work closer to 5:40. But mobile phone data places him in another location, about 25 kilometres away from Campbelltown at exactly 6:08 p.m. That call pinged off a cell tower on the southern side of Picton, which is much closer to Bargo than Campbelltown. Counsel assisting the coroner, Peter Singleton, explored the 6:08 phone call in thorough detail at Rachelle's inquest.
We had his phone being used south of Picton at a time when he said that he was on the other side of the Razorback mountain range in Campbelltown or MacArthur Square. Whilst not conclusive, tended to suggest that his alibi was not truthful. And my recollection is there was no supporting evidence for his shopping trip, and the independent evidence tended to suggest he was going towards Bargo when he denied it. So it was obviously a matter of great interest and importance to explore it as much as we could. The phone pings in a particular location. Cell towers point in certain directions. It's a vague indication, but a cell tower can give you an indication of the direction the person is relative to the cell tower. The topography is also important. You can be pinging on a cell tower far away if it's all flat in between you and the cell tower. If it's all mountainous in between you and the cell tower, then it's not likely to ping. It's not conclusive, but as a matter of probability, you generally ping on a cell tower that is close to you and not obscured by a mountain.
Here's retired Detective Damian Loone unpacking what we know so far.
Some of the most baffling questions in Rachelle's case are that where did she meet a killer? When and where was the fatal encounter? Did it happen in Bargo or down around Giroa?
Let's go back to our analysis of Kevin's alibi.
That 6:08 p.m. phone call is important. And when you look at Kevin's shopping trip, there's no proof of it. He's gone to a couple of shops but never bought anything.
For a closer look at the topography of the area we're referring to, there's an animated map with key locations on our website. Go to dearrochelle.com.au. That phone call Kevin made at 6:08 p.m. is of great significance. The number he dialed is almost identical to Rachelle's mobile number, but with two of the digits switched around, as if he'd gone to type the number and mixed them up. Here's Damian again.
There's two digits that have been swapped around at the end of the phone number, so that number Kevin called went to someone in Queensland, and it was a wrong number. Now, I firmly believe that Kevin was trying to ring Rachelle, but why? When Kevin was first questioned by homicide detectives, he didn't mention this phone call. He had to be reminded of it in his police interview.
I obviously didn't get through and never bothered it again. So obviously the reason I rang was something to do with work relation. There was no answer. He was engaged or something. I don't know if I spoke to anyone. I don't recall anyone saying, "You've got the wrong number." I obviously didn't try again, and if you've got the phone records there, so I obviously would have been discussing it with her the next day. But, whether it was a sale or whether it wasn't a sale or whether the people were coming back, I can't recall. So it wasn't relevant, I don't think.
So to recap, Kevin's last verified sighting is around 5:30 p.m. when he leaves work. His phone then pings south of Picton, yet he says he was in the Campbelltown area. After leaving Campbelltown, Kevin says he drives to Picton to visit his partner Alice. That's about a half-hour drive southwest. He says he arrives at Picton wanting to stay the night, but Alice isn't home. Kevin makes a further 2 phone calls from his mobile that evening. Both are to Alice and exactly an hour apart. It's unclear precisely where Kevin was at the time of these last 2 calls, but his evidence tends to suggest he was in the area he told police he was in for those calls. Phone records show at 6:38 p.m, Kevin rings Alice, but she doesn't answer. That call pings off a Picton cell tower, putting him in that area. He says Alice wasn't home. He drives 10 minutes further south to Tamor to get takeaway from a shop called either Tamor Gourmet Foods or Tamor Takeaway, where he orders
Fish cake, battered sav, a bag of chips and a Coke.
And a quick note, Tamor is in the opposite direction to Kevin's home. There's also takeaway options in Picton. Now remember, in 1983, when Kevin was questioned and later acquitted over the attempted sexual assault of a young mum at Darlinghurst, this was his alibi. This is not his voice.
I stopped at a takeaway food bar in Terminus Street, Liverpool, where I purchased a battered sav, a piece of fish, a bag of chips and a loaf of bread.
Detectives questioned Kevin about the similarities between his alibis, 18 years apart.
Well, yeah, I love fish and chips. Once I'll change that and get a fish cake and a battered sav and chips. I've done it twice this week.
When Detective Inspector Mick Ashwood was in charge of reviewing Rochelle's case in 2003, he re-examined Kevin's alibi alongside his mobile phone data.
Just swap the can of Coke for the loaf of bread. But to pull those exact words out on a recorded interview, what's in a statement from I think it was the 80s, is quite, well, it stands out to you that it could be a manufactured account of where they were, because we do know that independent evidence, he was down towards Bargo. We don't know exactly where he was, but this is important. It's independent evidence that puts him down there.
And here's Peter Singleton again.
It is not unknown for criminals to fall back upon a comfortable alibi that's worked for them before. In this case, one possibility is that Mr. Correll fell back upon an alibi that had worked for him before and decided to use it again, not because it was true, but because he was comfortable with it, he would be able to sustain it, not change his story, not forget. Another possibility is it was true. And it's just a coincidence that he had the same alibi 20 years apart. My view was that it was a proper thing to explore, to see what came of it. Any one thing in isolation doesn't, in a circumstantial case such as this would have been, doesn't amount to much. It is the accumulated weight of all the circumstances. One coincidence of similar alibis doesn't prove much at all, but you add it with all the rest.
According to Kevin, after he gets fish and chips from Tamor, he heads back to Picton to see if Alice is home yet, but she's not. His phone records show a call to Alice from his mobile at 7:38 p.m, which pings off a Narellan cell tower, which police believe suggests he was somewhere near Camden at that point in time. Now, this is a vital detail to highlight. At the time of that phone call, Kevin says he was at his unit in Camden. It was news to police that he was even living at Camden. In Kevin's first police interview, he didn't disclose his Camden address. He told investigators at the time of Rochelle's murder he was residing with Alice at Picton. For context, that unit of Kevin's directly overlooks Camden Holden. Let's get Damian's thoughts on this.
I don't know why he would have withheld that information from police. It was important. I don't know, and it's one of the mysteries of the brief.
Do you think he could have withheld that information because he was trying to hide that he could have been watching Rachelle?
Look, it also could have been a crime scene. That's what disturbs me. And obviously the police didn't know about the location of that unit near Camden Holden. And for me, that would be very worrying now, knowing that happened. And I know that the investigators at the time would have been looking for something like that. But for him to withhold that information, and sometimes you can do that, it's easy to do. And it could have been possibly been a crime scene.
His former partner told the inquest he had not a lot of furniture in that unit. but there were binoculars. Does that concern you at all?
A sparsely furnished flat overlooking the car yard with a pair of binoculars, yeah, that does concern me.
One more thing about that Camden unit that Kevin rented in 2001. We managed to track down the owner, David. Our picture editor, Jeff Darmanin, caught up with David at the property, where he says he made a bizarre discovery hidden inside the unit after Kevin moved out.
Do you have any memories when Kevin rented the unit?
He rented the unit, he worked next door, and it was very convenient being in that location. But and I did meet him a few times, which you would run into him and that, but he always struck me as being, quite a reputable sort of a person.
In 2001, could you see Camden Holden from where the unit was?
Yes, you could. From that unit, you could see it from both the bedroom window and the lounge room window, but they have since built a silo there on the adjoining block.
Can you describe the view from the unit into Camden Holden itself?
Yeah, you saw into the parking lot and some of the building. You saw a fair bit of the place, really, of the exposed place.
And could you see the red train carriage from there?
You could see the red train carriage from there, yeah.
And when did you discover police had searched Kevin's unit?
Well, it wasn't a discovery more so than they arrived, forensic squad, and went through the place and top to bottom marked the walls with not paint, but stuff to see fingerprints and all the stuff they use in forensic investigations.
How long after Rachelle's murder did Kevin move out?
Look, I can't honestly remember. To be quite honest, I can't remember, but I know he did leave. Yep. The state the flat was left in was, yes, we had to paint the walls because of the stuff and the marks on the forensic people had been through. There was marks on the carpet and everything else. So we then decided to do up the place and strip it and paint it and get it ready for the next tenant.
And while you were doing that, did you discover anything?
Yes, well, this is just it. We went pulling up the carpet. The carpet went into the wardrobe, and tucked in where it lifted in the wardrobe, found a wad of newspaper clippings, all directly associated with the murder. I took them home and said to my wife, I found these, and she said, I'll take it to the police, which I did the very next day and gave it to the detective. And all of it was, and I said, this is what I found. He's moved out, and this is what I found.
And what was the detective's reaction when you showed him that?
Yeah, they took it on board, and that was about it. And basically that's the last I heard of it for a while.
And when you looked through those clippings, was there any handwriting on anything? Just straight clippings?
No, straight clippings. Look, from memory, it was the page. They were folded pages of the stuff. Whatever was on the page was on that newspaper page.
And when Kevin had left the apartment and you'd cleaned up, how did everything finalise?
Well, Kevin left there in a bit of a hurry. Obviously, he owed me rent and left it. And like I said, the place, probably not according, but the police had left it, as they would find a forensic place afterwards. It was in need of a bit of TLC.
And did you have to chase Kevin for any money or anything outstanding?
Well, this is just it, I did. And ironically, I had a couple of, because he disappeared, I got a couple of mates that are in the car industry, and I just rang them and said, look, if you ever know where this bloke is, can you just let me know? I want to collect some rent and I can't find him anywhere. Well, I think now from memory, it was within days, one of the blokes rang me and said, oh, no problems, David. He's working at Hino down at Nowra. So I fronted down there, and to his credit, or anything at the time, I got paid straight away. The cheque was there, assuming that I'd be going home with a cheque that had bounced. It didn't, and that was my last earnings. But ironically, I was in Narellan Shopping Centre, and I ran into the detective that I'd got to know from the case. And I said, where are you up to with that? And he said, oh, we can't find him. I said, you got to be joking. I said, he owed me money. I soon found him, and I told him where there was. Now, after that point, that's the last I heard of anything. I didn't see the detective again, didn't hear what was going on, and it was just, he was a suspect. That was all there was to it.
Getting back into Kevin's alibi on the night in question. At 7:43 p.m, Alice calls Kevin. They speak for exactly 15 minutes and 27 seconds. Kevin says he asks Alice if he can come over to her place, but she says she's tired and going to bed. Kevin claims he then heads out. He jumps in his car and drives past Camden Holden because it's right behind his unit. He claims he sees the cleaner and stops to speak with him, asking him,
"Is everything okay? You're the cleaner?"
The cleaner says,
"Yeah, everything is okay."
but when the cleaner Raymond Kushabar is interviewed by police, he says,
"Whilst I was carrying out my cleaning outside, no person approached me at any stage."
Kevin's next unverified stop is at the service station at the end of the street, where he says he buys a bottle of milk and engages in some small talk with the service station staff member who he knows as David. During his statement to police, the staff member said while Kevin Correll was a familiar customer, he could not recall whether or not Kevin had come into the service station that night. From there, Kevin says he drives another 100 metres or so and pops into the Merino Hotel, where he puts $5 in the pokies and drinks a Scotch and Coke. This stop isn't verified by any witnesses or evidence, but it's possible police didn't canvass the hotel early enough to prove it or disprove his visit. Kevin says he then goes straight home and arrives at his Camden unit between 9 and 10 past 9 p.m, where he has a cup of coffee, irons a shirt for work and watches Big Brother on the TV, then falls asleep on the couch. He wakes up to the cricket playing on TV, turns the TV off and falls back asleep until he wakes up Friday morning at 7 a.m. Kevin goes to work, even though he's not rostered on to work the Friday, ahead of the June long weekend.
Looking back, when he came to work on that Friday morning, he was late and he looked like shit. He looked really crappy, really like he hadn't slept. And he left early on that Friday afternoon and saying he had a doctor's appointment too.
Another colleague, Kerry Thorpe, also noticed Kevin's appearance on Friday. This is her evidence, but not her voice.
I recall upon seeing him that day that he looked like death. By that I mean that he looked unwell, he looked tired and like he hadn't been to bed. I remember that although he looked that way, his clothing appeared normal and not dishevelled, and he was wearing a long black coat.
Kevin denies any involvement in Rachelle's death, and the coroner delivered an open finding after conducting a coronial inquest. Rachelle's initial investigation was dogged by police bungles, including lost CCTV and missed opportunities. Potential witnesses weren't interviewed early enough, and we'll never know exactly what forensic evidence was overlooked. But a major misstep centres around DNA. In 2003, police held a mass DNA screening in the local area.
With no strong leads, police, in an Australian first, asked 60 men to volunteer DNA samples.
The testing is not compulsory. The police say they can still rely on conventional methods of investigation.
Investigators had identified an unknown male DNA profile through their sampling of exhibits, including a bedsheet. At the time, detectives thought this was a major breakthrough in the case. But it turned out to be another blow to police and Rachelle's family. Here's Mick Ashwood.
Unfortunately, what didn't come through before that operation was the results of an internal searching of DNA. Police don't hold their own officers with DNA database, but it was established that an officer at Shoalhaven, it was their DNA when they were processing the exhibits that got onto each of the items. Now, by this stage, we'd come around to an inquest. So we're now a few years into the case. So that leads to some fundamental problems. And I'm talking here from outside the investigation, because I was no longer part of that investigation at that time, apart from coordinating the DNA database. But when the information came through that the DNA belonged to an officer, first thing you'll do is eliminate the officer, which was done. Then you look at the procedural mistake in the handling of the exhibits, which is what occurred on this occasion. you could say that distracted the investigation for a time, that it wasn't the DNA of the persons of interest, any of them, meant that we weren't looking at those people anymore. When I say we, the Shoalhaven detectives leading the case.
I also asked FBI-trained criminal profiler Chris Illingsworth her reaction to the DNA mix-up.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that happened because it was turned out to be a big red herring in itself. But, he may well have had the gloves on, wiped his brow, and then it's contaminated when he's touched the next exhibit. So procedurally, it wasn't the right thing, but on a human level, you can understand how it would happen.
I remember just not being surprised. I think I would imagine that Dad would have told me because everything went through Dad first and then Dad told me and Mum. Yeah, I imagine that he would have told me, and I don't remember being surprised, because the DNA profile hadn't matched anybody and we'd tested everybody. They'd stuffed up a lot of things. And I'm not running the police down. They worked really hard, but there were a number of things that were, stuffed up, things lost. So I wasn't surprised. And as I've said to you before, it's full of hope up and letdowns the whole way through. So it's just another letdown.
That would have been a gut-wrenching kick in the guts, a letdown, because you're on the verge of saying, well, this may break the case. We may find the offender or offenders. And yet then only to find that because it was poor crime scene examination without being properly kitted up with your personal protective equipment, and you've left your own DNA behind, is somewhat not only terrible and gut-wrenching for the investigators, but an embarrassment.
In the course of this investigation, we've discovered Kevin Steven Correll has had quite a lot of different jobs over the years, or at least he claims he's had them. Car salesman, DJ, detective, labourer, armed security guard, psychologist, garage door salesman, private investigator, and lifeline counsellor. Now we can exclusively reveal his latest job. A tip-off led us to the New South Wales Central Coast, where Kevin was said to be working as an RSA marshal. That's the guy who monitors the welfare of patrons when it comes to alcohol. On June 7, 2024, the 23rd anniversary of Rachelle's murder, a tight crew headed to the New South Wales Central Coast. Myself, Kristy's best friend Mindy Wicks, and Mindy's husband dropped in for a drink at the Leagues Club.
So sign in, we have to sign in normal.
Hello, how are you going?
Good, thanks. Yes, please.
Giving you a hard time, is it?
We come face to face with Kevin at the club's entrance within seconds of arriving.
Oh, it always does. No, enter.
Is there any entertainment on tonight? No, not tonight.
Have a lovely evening.
Thank you. What are the fucking chances? Huh? Like, I literally was putting in my address wrong because I saw him and I started typing, and then I saw him and I was like, fuck. And I was pressing spaces where I couldn't fucking remember where I live, and then he come over.
I was, my heart was racing when he walked over.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, that's him.
That's fucking him.
That's him.
Yeah, what do you make of seeing him tonight?
Yeah, do you know, it, and this is probably going to sound silly, but seeing him in the flesh, face to face, having him literally inches from me, it makes it even more fucking important to figure this out. It's like a power thing. I feel like he needs to control the room. He And to a degree, he kind of does, because he's in and around everything. Like, he's just there, you know, literally walking the place and boom, he's standing right next to me. It was confronting.
Yeah, my heart was racing.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind, early on, when I was investigating Rachelle's case as a solo freelance journalist, I'd been warned to tread very carefully. And the more I uncovered, the more I understood why.
What you were suggesting you were going to do, I wouldn't carry that out. I fear for you. Just thought that you should be aware of what you were doing. Sometimes you get lost in your work and you don't realise what you've done until it's too late. Well, as I said to you before, you're poking the bear.
Now more than a year into the investigation, with News Corp's backing and so much fresh evidence, it's time for us to approach Kevin Correll. Since the inquest more than 17 years ago, Kevin's moved on with his life, out of the media spotlight. But Rachelle's family deserves answers, and Kevin deserves the chance to speak. We have a lot of questions for him, so we wanted to approach him out in the open.
And you're behind him?
Yeah, I'm right behind him. He's turning in left onto Wyong Road, which is still heading in your direction. You're hitting him up when he gets there, aren't you?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm right behind him.
Rough ETA.
Couple of minutes. Okay, he's just jumped to red light to turn left. I'm not going to do it.
No.
I think he'll be turning into Bay Village Road really soon.
Coming soon on Dear Rachelle.
It was in an envelope. It was basically accusing her of Rachelle's murder.
He has a hatred for all this other than the fact he wants the truth to come out.
The person who killed Rachelle Childs would have a similar motive towards you, also hatred, if you actually managed to expose him.
Schizophrenic. I've never seen a man treat a woman like that. I felt fear for my life.
I'm sure there is something out there, or someone who knows something, that will bring essentially a monster to be arrested.
Watch out, Dad.
Get out of the way, get out of the way.
Dear Rachelle is a multimedia production from True Crime Australia. If you want to be one of the first to find out what happens next, go to dearrachelle.com.au. That's where eligible digital News Corp Australia subscribers get early access to podcast episodes and breaking news in our live investigation. And you will also find exclusive videos, interactive evidence, feature articles and more. That's dearrachelle.com.au. If you have any tips or confidential information to share with me, Ashlea Hansen, please send an email to dearrachelle@news.com.au. Our supervising producer and audio editor is Reese Gunter. Rachel Fountain is executive producer and audio director. Our executive editor is Sarah Blake. Our senior journalist is Patrick Carline. Video editors are Gillian McNally, Owen Yang and Stephen Woods. Picture editors are Jeff Darmanin and Kristy Miller. Senior camera operators are Daniel Andrews and Oscar Vieira, with sound design by Martin Peralta. Thanks also to Greg Thompson, Eleni Pineras, Shoba Rayo, Faye Gould, Vanessa Graham, Hayley Goddard, Stephen Grice, Charlotte Karp, Tina Coggins and Harry Hughes. Special thanks to the Daily Telegraph editor Ben English. And Dear Rachelle would not be possible without the help and unwavering support of Kristy and Anne Childs, Mindy Wicks, Damian Loone and Rachelle's friends. This podcast series is hosted and investigated by me, Ashlea Hansen.